All right. This video is to, this video is to teach us about the roles of the president as the leader of the executive branch to be done in civics class. On your Google folder, there should also be a note outline that you can follow to take notes on this. So the head of the executive branch is clearly the president, is the head of the federal executive. To become president of the United States, you must be at least 35 years old. We haven't even really come close to that in our history. The youngest president ever is the guy on the left, Teddy Roosevelt, and the youngest president to be elected is the guy on the right, John F. Kennedy. Both of them are 42, but Theodore Roosevelt actually had him beat by a few months in difference. But how could Roosevelt be the youngest president, but not the youngest president elected? Think about that for a second. How could Roosevelt be the youngest president ever, but not the youngest president elected? That's right. Teddy Roosevelt was the vice president before he was president. And McKinley, the president, was assassinated. Teddy Roosevelt becomes president and the youngest ever at the age of 42, but he wasn't actually elected to be president. Initially, he was elected to be the vice president. Another requirement to be president of the United States is to reside within the United States for the past 14 years, and you must be a natural-born citizen. Now, the amendment that created the natural-born citizen rule is actually the 14th Amendment that said anybody born on American soil is an American citizen. And this idea that being born an American citizen to be president goes back much further than that, than the 14th Amendment. And so there's been some question over time over what exactly it means to be born an American citizen. Is being just born in American territory count for the president? Does it have to be born to American parents? Or exactly what are the guidelines to be president have been questioned. Recently, this guy on the right here, this is Senator McCain from the state of Arizona. He ran for president a number of times, but the first time he ran for president, there was some question about this and his qualifications for it because he was actually born in Panama. His father was a naval commander, and he was stationed at the Canal Zone in Panama, and some people question whether or not that would make him being born in the United States and whether that qualify him to be president. And the courts at that time ruled that it was fine. He was born to American parents. Rule of blood says that he's an American citizen. Also, there have been some people who have questioned the heredity of President Obama. Mostly, these are people who are his opponents and kind of on the fringe view of things. But even if, let's say President Obama was not born in the United States, he's still born to one American parent, his mother, so he'd still be born a citizen. So chances are he's still a natural-born citizen, meets the qualifications anyway. But there have been some people who have questioned, mostly as a conspiracy theory, that he was born elsewhere and not born in the United States, and questioned whether he would meet the requirements to be president. But for the most part, I would think that he does. So far in our history, with the exception of one, all presidents have pretty much been like these guys, crusty old white dudes. All presidents so far have been Christian. All presidents have been male. Barack Obama is the first one elected who is not a white guy. And there's been some question over whether or not when women will be elected to the highest office of our country, and that is yet to be seen. In 2008, President Obama competed against another senator, Hillary Clinton, for the Democratic nomination, and it was somewhat close, and some people thought Hillary Clinton could have won and run for president, and maybe she would have become the first woman president. But so far, obviously, that has not happened. We'll see if that will happen in your lifetime. Besides being men and Christian, most presidents have fit under this quality that we call a WASP. A WASP is a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, meaning not only are they white, they're pretty much the whitey McWhitest white people you can come up with. They're very run-of-the-mill, play the averages of the United States population. An Anglo-Saxon means not only you're white, but you're from Western Europe. Think like British or German or French, white Anglo-Saxon. You're not like an Italian or a Polak, not a lot of direct children of immigrants have been elected president. A Protestant is a certain denomination of Christianity that means you're not Catholic. So Methodist and Lutheran and Baptist and all those would fall under being Protestant. Most presidents, but not all, have had some level of college education, but that is not required. Most presidents, but not all, have had some sort of military experience, and there are some that feel that this should be a qualification to be president, is that you had experience in the military, but so far that is not the case, and there have been a number of presidents who have not been in the Army or the military and have been elected, including President Obama. Most presidents, but not all, have had a vast deal of political experience. A lot of them come out of being governors or at least senators, and so that's typically the fact. And most presidents, but not all, we have elected have been pretty wealthy before they were president. So, does the president really represent the majority of Americans? Well, yes and no. They're pretty much a mixture of some of the, most common qualities as far as religion is concerned. Being college educated, being in the military, being politically experienced and wealthy really isn't something that a common American could qualify under, however. So, most presidents have been not only white, but pretty much whitey McWhites a lot. All right. The first non-Protestant president was John F. Kennedy. He was a Catholic, and many people thought that was a major deal at the time, because if you're a Catholic, you follow the religious guidance of the Pope, and many people felt that there was some concern they would listen to the Pope first and the country second, which is kind of a ridiculous thought, but there were some people who in the 1960s even questioned John F. Kennedy because he wasn't a typical, WASP when he was elected president. Presidents are limited to 2 terms of office currently. When the Constitution was first written, this standard did not exist. George Washington just set a tradition that serving 2 terms would suffice, and then after that he said that was enough for anybody. Most presidents following Washington would follow that tradition. I mean, we named our nation's capital after this guy. He's pretty respectable. He's on the dollar bill. How can you try to beat him? There were a couple presidents who tried. Woodrow Wilson attempted to run for a 3rd term. Theodore Roosevelt attempted to run for a 3rd term, but they were all unsuccessful. The first person to actually run for a 3rd term and win was Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who actually ran a 4th time and won that as well. His is kind of a weird situation, though. He was elected during the Great Depression, and during his presidency, we started to come out of that depression. Also, during his presidency, we fought World War II, and he was given a lot of credit for resolving both of those crises. So he was a vastly popular leader, and he was able to get reelected 4 times. He died in his 4th term, or who knows, maybe he would have kept being elected. But following his death, they write the 22nd Amendment, making the 2 terms official. And so now presidents constitutionally can only serve 2 terms because we didn't want to impart a dictatorship on our country. It is actually theoretically possible to be president for 10 years. Can you figure out how that could happen? 10 years. Well, president's term is 4. How could it add up to 10? Yes, it is possible to serve 2.5 terms. And a half term would be if you became president through being vice president or some situation like that, and the president dies or resigns and you take over, you could actually run 2 more times. So it is actually possible to be president 10 years. Nobody has served that 2.5 term so far. To be president is pretty sweet. They get very good salary, $400,000 a year, about half that for the vice president. Beyond that, they don't really pay for much out of pocket with their salary. They get an expense account to handle whatever they need to. If it's the business of president, they get money for travel, for entertainment, $19,000 a year just to, whatever. Sometimes they hire musicians, to come to the White House or go to shows and baseball games, what have you. Free transportation, they have their own hardened military aircraft, Air Force One. Even after you're president, you continue to get paid for life, $183,000 annual. So the idea, I guess, being they don't want presidents to be Walmart greeters when they retire. So yes, they get paid a salary for life and also get Secret Service protection for life, in part because people may threaten them, but also because they have secrets, and we don't really want that to fall into the hands of the enemy should a president be kidnapped and tortured and forced to tell that information. So, they get paid for life and they get Secret Service protection for life. Should a president die, there is a order of secession. Can anybody think of the amendment that created the order of secession? That's correct, the 25th. So after the president, you have the vice president, the Speaker of the House, the President pro tempore, and then it goes to the cabinet members and the order that they were created. So the top of the list would be the Secretary of State, and then the bottom of the list would be the Secretary of Homeland Security. So they have this lengthy list saying who would be president, if there was some catastrophe and all these people were to die. If you look at page 320 in your text, they diagram this order of secession, but that's established by the 25th Amendment. We have in our history actually had 4 assassinated presidents, John F. Kennedy, Abraham Lincoln, McKinley, and Garfield, all 4 of which killed by gunmen. So there have been 4 presidents assassinated, the last one being JFK, the first one being Lincoln. Most people remember Kennedy and Lincoln. The 2 in the middle, McKinley and Garfield, are traditionally what people forget about. Beyond the 4 presidents that were assassinated, there have actually been 5 other times where the vice president has become the president. Tyler, Fillmore, Andrew Johnson, Chester Arthur, Teddy Roosevelt when McKinley was shot, Coolidge, Truman, Lyndon Baines Johnson, Gerald Ford took over when Nixon resigned. So 8 times they have died, 4 assassinations, 4 from disease or heart attacks and strokes and things like that, and 1 from a resignation. So it is kind of important who our vice president is. If you consider about somewhere around just under 1 in 4 vice presidents gets to become president historically, it can be a pretty important role to have. All right, let's talk about what the jobs of the president are and get out of here. Okay, when I made this slideshow, President George W. Bush was in office, so most of these pictures involve him. The legislative leader means, while not in charge of Congress, he does get to suggest laws he would like Congress to pass. And this is him signing a bill into a law, and everybody's taking pictures and celebrating because they were amazed that President George W. Bush could write. No. I'm just kidding. No, it's a historic event when a bill is signed, and you'll also note he has all of these pens down there. That's a pretty traditional thing. If a president signs something that they think is significant, they will sign it using all these different pens. Use a different pen for each letter or what have you, and then they can hand them out to their personal friends that were important in getting that bill passed. So I don't know what this particular bill was, but the president is signing into law, and you'll note all his pens, and they're celebrating this, law that he, I would imagine, suggested getting passed. The president is also the commander-in-chief, meaning he is in charge of all the armed forces. He is the boss, so to speak. He's also in charge of all the federal law enforcement, the FBI, the cops, and all that. Now, that's part of the Department of Justice, but he's head of the Department of Justice, so that puts him in charge. He's also in charge of the Department of Defense, and he's in charge of all the armed forces. This particular picture is George W. Bush landing on an aircraft carrier proclaiming victory in Iraq. He had military experience in the Texas Air National Guard and could fly and land jet planes. So while this seems kind of cheesy, I think if I were the president, I'd probably try to land a jet plane too. That would be pretty awesome. The president is also a foreign policy leader, meaning he sets the relationship we're going to have towards other countries, and he is in charge of that. This particular political cartoon is criticizing our foreign policy because basically they're saying there's a black and white crayon, meaning you're either for us or against us, which is not really what the sort of relationship you want to have with the world, but this is just a political cartoon that I found that related to foreign policy. Related to that is the fact that the president himself is the chief diplomat, meaning he personally travels to other countries representing the United States. Foreign policy, you can set that without traveling, but chief diplomat is actually when you travel and you participate in this action. As part of that, he also appoints the ambassadors and diplomats that are used in the United States. And so this is him in the United Nations, President Bush, and next to him is the Prime Minister of England at the time, Tony Blair. The president also gets to pick all the judges for the Supreme Court and other federal courts. Those appointments have to be approved by the Senate, but he picks them initially. And also he has the judicial power to pardon, reprieve, and issue commutations. Pardon is a complete removal of penalty for a crime. A reprieve is a delay of a crime, and a commutation is a lessening of a crime. So he has a lot of influence over the judicial branch by picking who the judges will be, and also by removing the penalty for crime if he chooses to do so. Other roles that the president serves: he acts as the chief of state, which makes him a symbol of the United States. This is a picture of President Bush throwing out the first pitch for a national baseball game. That symbolic role, being the chief of state. And he is also the leader of a political party. The Republicans, conferred to President Bush, and the Democrats today confirmed to President Obama. And since he is in such an important position, they, have quite a role in their political parties. So that is the qualifications and responsibilities of the president explained to you in 20 minutes. There will probably be quiz questions about this. Make sure you fill out that note outline and continue working on your president research project and president evaluation. Thank you.